This is the only trailside tool you will ever need to carry. It's great, but it has one major flaw. This is OneUp's EDC Tool multi-tool system. You can buy different attachments for it, and it is a fantastic bit of kit to take on the trail with you. In fact, it is the only tool I take with me on every single ride I ever go on. The problem with it is that despite the fact that it does lots of different things, it only does one thing really well, and that is pumping up a tyre. Handy because it's a pump. However, everything else it does is massively compromised. Despite that, I still stand by the fact that this is the best trail tool on the market. This isn't a sponsored piece from OneUp, this is my genuine thoughts, and that's why I'm going to talk about the pros and the cons of this system. Now, if you don't know what OneUp's EDC system is, well, obviously this is a pump. But if you pull this little bit out, you've got a load of tools and tricks in here that actually will get you out of a lot of trouble out on the trail. Now, if you don't want a pump, there's actually a version of this that also goes in your steerer tube. That's also great, but I prefer it with the pump. So the major flaw with the EDC system is that none of the tools that they provide with it are actually all that good. So within this capsule that I've pulled out of my pump, there are various different things. There is a little multi-tool, there is a tyre lever, there is a chain tool, there's also a tubeless repair kit in there, some link pliers to split your chain, and in here there's also a CO2 chuck as well. The problem is that none of these things are actually the best on the market by any stretch. So what I'm going to do is have a look at some of my other favourites if I was going to carry a big bag with all of the things individually. So let's start at the top. Right, if I pop this apart, got the EDC system with some chain links in there. That's kind of a nice little touch. And we have the multi-tool. Okay, so this has pretty much all of the little Allen hex keys that you're going to need, all the way up to 8mm if you combine these two. Now, as you can see, when I'm pulling these together, it gets quite stiff. And why is that? Well, it's quite a small tool. There's actually a little bit of corrosion in there after, I think, 6 or 7 years of regular use. And because it's a small tool, it does twist, so it's all binded up together. It doesn't feel very nice, but it does do everything it needs to do. Now, if I wasn't going to carry this on the tool, this is probably the multi-tool I'll be carrying. It's a Crank Brothers M20. The M20 means it's got 20 different tools on there, and it actually has absolutely everything you're going to need, all the way from tiny little Allen keys through to a chain tool on there too, and little spoke keys. I actually used the spoke keys yesterday, so they do come in very handy. It also has its own tubeless repair plug fork with this little knurled bit on there. We're going to talk about that on another tool later on though. So the nice thing about this tool is the shape and the size and the feel of it. It's got a good bit of weight to it, which kind of gives you that sturdiness that you're looking for a tool when you're pushing real hard. Maybe you've got some pedals that you're going to need to get off there and it's a little bit tight. It fits really nicely in the palm of your hand, and because there's a good bit of length there, you can get a decent bit of leverage if one of your bolts is seized up a little bit. Overall, it's a really nicely put together tool that works really well. The other bit of the 20 bit is this little pod that sits on the outside, and this holds not only your little chain links, but some tubeless repair sticks. Just adds a little bit of extra to that tool. Do you know what my one problem with this tool though is actually? This, it flops down. That's a little bit annoying. Now, if you haven't seen this little green blob on the end of my tyre lever, it is actually a chain tool, and it's quite an effective one. I have used it in a cinch, but it isn't great. There's not a huge amount of leverage in there. It's a little bit small. There's not much sort of adjustability for different size chains and stuff like that. But again, it does work, and it houses little spoke keys on there too. But it's not great. The Crank Brothers multi-tool, again, has a much bigger, much easier to grasp chain tool on there. And of course, you've got your spoke tools and a valve core removal tool in there. So multi-tool wise, this one is good, but this one is a lot better, apart from this flappy chain tool. Next up, the tyre lever. It's not often that I actually need a tyre lever these days. I mean, I'm not replacing tubeless tyres on the trail. However, when you do need to use a tyre lever, in my eyes, bigger is always better. And that's why my preferred one, as you can see from how dirty and tired they are, is the Design Power Lever XL, extra large. Look, it's at least twice the length of the OneUp one and has a much better hook. So you get a pair of them. These are super strong. Like, I've been using these on some of the toughest downhill tubeless tires I've ever come across. And these little hooks on the end, these are as fresh as the day they came out of the factory. They just last. That little narrowness, in my opinion, really helps get those tyres on. These are amazing. I've actually got 3 sets of these, some in the car, some in my pack if I am carrying a bigger bag and I'm not carrying my EDC, which is very rare, and some in the garage because they are just so good. Also, being yellow makes them much harder to lose. Okay, so as you can see, the EDC does come with one, again, very nicely packaged OneUp, but if you're going standalone stuff, these are my pick. Okay, next up is my tubeless tyre repair jibber jabber. I don't know the technical term for this, I just call it a jibber jabber. It's a little fork that pushes the tubeless repair strips into a hole in your tyre when you have a puncture. Now, I have used these tyre repair strips loads of times. In fact, I have a tyre on my long-term bike at the moment that I punctured in September last year, and it's still going strong. On the EDC, I have them in this little capsule that screws into the bottom of the whole sort of unit overall. So it goes in like that and it screws out, and I store them down in there. It's good, but it could be better. And this is actually my favorite little tubeless jibber jabber. I think it's from Hutchinson. I've had it quite a long time, and truth be told, I don't know who makes it, but it's a really good example of them. It's double-ended, so you get 2 storage compartments. Here's the fork. It's actually a little bit bigger than EDC's with a slightly bigger hole, so it's a bit easier to get those tubeless repair strips through. You have storage in here. Obviously screw that back on there if you need to. Little rubber seal, very nice. And on this side, you've got a spike. Why do I want to spike my tyre, you might be asking? Well, if you've got a small hole in your tyre that isn't being repaired by the fluid that's in there, by your sealant, maybe it's dried out because you left it too long. These are really useful because you push this through the hole, and then because it's got that knurled sort of texture on there, you almost make the hole a little bit bigger and give the hole a little bit more texture. And that makes the tubeless repair strip a little bit easier to get in and gives it a slightly firmer hold in my experience. So having one that has both a decent fork and the little hole enlarger is a really good thing. It's quite small and compact, slips in your pack really nicely and doesn't weigh very much. It is better than OneUp's EDC one. So I've talked a lot about punctures for the last couple of minutes, and I'm going to carry on for a minute longer because quite a lot of people these days are using CO2 cartridges when they get a puncture. They're a great way of getting a lot of air into your tyre. So if you've burped the rim and maybe the tyre's popped off it and you're sort of not holding air, CO2 can pop that tubeless tyre back into the rim. Really useful things to carry. So you're thinking, oh, has EDC got one of these? Of course it does. And it is hidden in here. So this is what you put over the tube, but if you unscrew this, you've got yourself a small, effective emergency CO2 chuck on there. Screw it in there, the little pin that's inside here will pierce the CO2 and you'll get a blast of air through there, pump it with your tyre real quick and then top it up with a pump if you really need to. So I have used this in a race situation. I did an enduro over in Africa, very cool, and I got a puncture mid-stage and I didn't want to lose too much time, and I used it and it was really effective. Okay, so you might have guessed, I do have a slightly higher performing CO2 canister tool in my arsenal, which I do sometimes use. This one is just really simple. Screw the canister in there, attach this bit to your tyre, and then what you have here is this little red dial, open and close. The nice thing about that is that it actually makes it a little easier to regulate the CO2 flow into the tyre. Instead of just like splashing it all in, it's quite nice sometimes just to be able to control that flow a little bit easier. But to be fair to OneUp, this works really quite well. Okay, at the start of the video, I was perhaps a little bit unfair on OneUp because I said the only thing that the pump does well is pumping air. And that's not strictly true because one of the tools that is hidden within my particular EDC setup is a pair of chain link pliers. And this is not something that I've seen on many trail tools in the past. If you've ever snapped a chain and you've been trying to sort of like break one of your quick links, or connect them together, you will know that as much as anyone says, oh, you can do it with your fingers, it's just not that easy all the time, especially when it's dirty, wet, cold, oily and greasy. So a pair of chain link pliers that sit within my multi-tool, have a nice little rubber spring on them, is really good. Very rarely used, but when they are used, absolute gold dust. Okay, so this is where the OneUp EDC pump really is very, very good. Pumping up tyres. It's a simple job, but the OneUp does it so well. This is the larger of the 2 pumps they offer. It's 100cc. What that means is that it pumps in an awful lot of air for every stroke. The stroke itself is really smooth. This is like an almost entirely metal construction, so it feels super sturdy, and that just gives it that nice sort of sorted feeling when it's in your hands and you're pushing hard to get a load of air in there, especially as you're getting up towards those higher pressures. With lots of air going in at once, it means you're doing less strokes on the trail, and it is noticeable at how quickly tyres get up to pressure with this particular pump. Now this one, as you can see, is very well used. I think it's 6 or 7 years I've had it now. The anodizing is being rubbed off, the plastic parts look a bit tatty. But the nice thing about this is that OneUp offer full service kits. So you can take it apart, you can replace the little rubber O-rings and the seals and the gaskets and all that sort of stuff. So it's a really good thing that you can service it easily, because this isn't a cheap tool. It is quite expensive. I actually don't know how much it costs off the top of my head. So there are prices up on the screen around here of the system that I have. It is expensive, but I still think it's good value for money, because value for money doesn't mean cheap. What it means is it might cost a bit, but it's going to last you a long time, and that is what this has done. The tools encased in this pump are not the best on the market. I have better multi-tools, I have better tyre levers, I have better CO2 canisters and tubeless repair kits. But the fact that it's all stored within what I think is probably the best trail pump on the market, so easily accessible, so easy to store on the bike with its little clips that go on the bottle cage bosses. This is why on pretty much every single ride I go on, this goes with me. And that's why I think this is the only trail tool you need. Now, if you think you've got a better trail tool, let me know in the comments. And if you've enjoyed this video, of course, give it a like. And finally, if you want to see more tech content, check out our Idiot's Guide to Mountain Bike Tyres.